What's up, guys? Duncan the Highlander here. I got my little kid in the back. I am driving towards his daycare. I got a question last night, and I'm going to try my best to try to maybe go off the top and try to repeat the conversation that I ended up having last night in the sauna with one of the guys, Teddy. He was mentioning reaction speed, and he was mentioning having adrenaline and feeling like time was slowing down. And I was expressing that during that period of time actually is slowing down. That's what it is. Hope you guys don't hear my brakes. Too bad, my brakes. Need to get new brakes. And my child in the back. But I was explaining that what happens is just like how a camera, when you're doing slow-mo, takes in more frames per second, it actually just allows more pictures to come in. That's what happens when you get an adrenaline dump or when it feels like time slow down. Your body goes into that moment, your body goes into that moment, and you start perceiving time a lot slower because it's just taking in more image. You're taking in more data, and by taking in more data and shifting through that data, it gives you as the viewer the perspective that time is slowing down. But it's just what's happening is like we normally take it in at whatever 60 frames per second, whatever what your brain registers it at. It's like you're doubling or tripling that, so it feels as if time's going slower because you're going through more images. So it gives you more time to react. You get a finer detail on things. So the question was when you're fighting, when you have more fights, does that happen more? Do you get to a point where you can bob and weave, where time slows down? And I was explaining that, yeah, like in all of my fights, that happens just because adrenaline's going on. And I'm sure that happens to the next person too, that the person to your opponent, that you have so much adrenaline that time's slowing down, things are just different. But it's not so much that time's slowing down, it's just that everything happens so quick, you feel like it's going slow. But then when you look at it, you realize that, wow, that like when you say time slowing down, you hear that and you think, oh my God, and you act like you have control over it. Yes, there's things that you have to realize that that's what I'm trying to work on now, is the understanding. Like that's the big thing that I'm getting from my last fight, is that it felt like it was so long, but it was really short. So it's the understanding that when things are going on in there, you have adrenaline, so it feels like it's taking forever. But really, things are going pretty quick. I know, baby, we passed the waterfall. So then the way that question evolved was, let me see if we're still recording. Nice. So the way that question evolved was, oh shit, I'm not gonna edit any of this. Just keeping my phone on my gi, hoping this is gonna work. So the way that question evolved was, the idea is that as I was explaining that, yes, so this is what's happening in the fights, but what's happening in sparring is something that I'm starting to get to recently that's a little different, but if you look at it, it looks the same. So in my fights, because you have so much adrenaline, time slows down and your reaction time is quicker. That doesn't happen the same in sparring. But what's happening in sparring now is I'm becoming better at understanding distance. You hear people say that. You hear people say understanding distance, but you don't really know what that means. But like when you actually live it, it becomes something. Words are just words until like they become something. So what I mean by I'm saying I'm creating distance is that now I have a better understanding of of the space. So whereas before it felt like, and this I feel like what happens with everybody, is that it feels instantaneously. So like you throw a jab and it feels like I have an instant to react to the jab, or you throw a cross and it feels like I have an instant to react to the cross. So I'm not giving myself any time, and it feels like you're playing a competition of speed or a competition of reaction, and you're counting that your reaction is so much faster than theirs, that they're gonna throw something and you're gonna be able to move before they do it. Well, what I'm understanding now is the way you give yourself extra time is by making a buffer, by creating a barrier, and that's where the distance management comes in. So what happens is you make them, number one, two things. I'm becoming better at drawing. You hear people talk about drawing out an attack. Well, now I actually know what that means. Like, yeah, I knew what that meant, but like to actually be able to do it. to create a distance, to know your distance, so that at that point it doesn't matter what they throw. So it's not like Whereas even maybe if you and me were just you and whoever, were just jab sparring, there was a point where just throwing jabs it'd be hard because you're trying to react off the jab, trying to react off of that. Now, from understanding distance, that's not so much of an issue anymore, because I'm not trying to react off the jab in particular. I'm trying to create a bubble, and I'm trying to make sure that you don't pass that bubble. And whether or not you pass that bubble with a jab, a spin, a cross, a combination, it doesn't matter. Because from there, I know I'm either going to level change, I'm going to go on your hips and shoot for a takedown, I'm going to use a kick to counter with, or I'm going to counter with a punch or something like that, or I'm just going to angle and get out the way, or counter to the body. So starting to understand, now when you look at those things, they look the same from the outside. If you don't really know what you're talking, or if you don't really know what you're looking at, you just see people using reaction time and skill. But I'm starting to understand the difference between using reaction that's more based off of instincts, and that's more based off of being in the moment and having a high adrenaline dump and being able to perceive time in a different, as the viewer, being able to perceive time differently, versus when you're in a state that you're much colder, you're much calmer, and your brain is, everything is very real, where you feel everything, because when you're sparring, you don't have that much adrenaline going on. So you have to be technical, you have to be slick. And that's when I'm starting to realize that understanding distance is king. And that's what allows you to be able to create counters and to be able to react to things differently. Because when you have a space in between, it just gives you more time. I hope I didn't ramble on for too long. I hope all that made sense, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to post this up soon. Thanks, Teddy, for motivating me to make some videos.